pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Father, again, as a town council, we come to you asking for your guidance and your leadership. Give us wisdom and good judgment in making decisions for every citizen in the town of Nashville. Amen.
Amen.
Our first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the September 3rd, 2024 meeting. Were there any corrections to those minutes?
There was, I meant to tell Lou earlier without calling her out in the meeting, there's one little clerical word, I can't remember what it was, but it was a was instead of were or something like that. There was just one time, I don't remember what it was.
So when you find out with that correction, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. No one signed up to speak tonight, so we'll move on to our first item on our agenda, and that's the Stony Creek Environment Park. And Coy, thank you so much for being here and presenting this.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as you know, late last year, we received an environmental enhancement grant through the Attorney General's office to purchase the 48 acres that adjoin Stony Creek Environmental Park. And in January of this year, we closed on that property. One of the last things we need to do to meet our requirements of that grant is to put a deed restriction on that property that limits the use of that property in perpetuity for preservation, conservation, passive recreation, and educational uses. So we have an attached declaration of covenants and restrictions that puts that restriction on that property. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have about that document.
And Coy, are these pretty much the restrictions put on all people that have this type grant, all of this?
Yes, with my conversation with our attorney, this is pretty run-of-the-mill, pretty
That's what I was
common in any
thinking.
type of conservation easement. The language might be slightly different just depending on the grant that you receive for it. But these do allow some flexibility. You know, we intended to hold that property for conservation and to do some trails and that type of thing on there. This still allows us to do that.
Great.
You just wouldn't be able to build anything
That's what I was
on that
wondering.
property
Okay.
unless it's support. There are some support structures you can build for the recreation.
Okay, great.
Corey, that was my question that the mayor just asked. So our attorney has looked through this agreement
Yes, sir.
and everything seems to be good. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions about the footage. It always talks about the top of the stream. That's a good little distance. It doesn't say the bottom of the stream. It says the top of the banks. So I mean so it's 300 foot, and if the bank is another 100 foot, you're talking about 400 foot. So is that required, or is that something we made up?
I believe, let's see. You're talking about on.
Well, there's several of them. Page 4, section D and E, and then page 5, section H. It always talks about the top of the bank. And
But you
again,
couldn't make up the footage. It's gonna have to be a requirement, I would think,
Yeah, and
somewhere.
I don't recall offhand if that was a requirement of the EEG. I used language from another deed restriction that I found from a land and water conservation fund. So I did just copy the same footage and stuff that they had in there.
But I know ours is pretty rolling, so I mean, if you go to the top of the bank, I mean, that could be a long ways, and then you got 300 or 100 foot, whichever one it is, 300, 150, before you can do anything. That's a lot of, that's a lot. And again, I'm all for conservation, especially on property like this that's mostly wetlands.
Yeah.
But I was just concerned about that language, because usually it's, when you have a blue line, it's 50 foot from the center, not from the bank. And so-
Yeah, and some of those, I know that E was talking about parking facilities. I don't foresee us ever putting parking facilities on there, but I believe that requirement is also from NCDEQ in the flood, with it being in the floodway. I don't think we would be able to get closer for that one specifically.
Yeah, that one's 300 from the top of the stream
Right.
also. Well, and some other small concern, which is on I, on page 4. It mentions later on, and it mentions a couple places about trees, but it doesn't specifically say we can take the trees down for passing roads. It says we can put passing roads in, and we can take the trees out for a number of reasons listed, but it doesn't say passing roads. And so I'm concerned that we're going to mess ourselves up, because it says you can take trees down for boundary marking, fencing, signage, fire containment, disease control, invasive exotic plant control, and removal of the threatened property. It doesn't say a word about paths and roads, but it does say passing roads somewhere else. So I just want, and we might need to put it there too.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly add it to that section as well.
And the road thing, I mean, the distance isn't a big deal, but I mean, if we can make it less, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a long ways, in my opinion. But if we're required to do it, we're required to do it.
Was that under I?
That was under I, yeah. It doesn't mention passing roads at all.
Any other thing you'd like to see in it? Or anything you'd like
I think
to
that
have
was
a
it.
question about?
That was all I had.
I'm just thankful you got us this grant, and I'm thankful to see this and see it moving forward, because I think it really is a good thing for the citizens of Nashville. Do I hear a motion to approve the declaration of covenants and restrictions for the use of the 48 acres purchased with the State Environment Enhancement Grant and added to the Stony Creek Environmental Park?
So made.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And Mayor, if I may, I did want to share, Ashley and I did just return from a conference in Winston-Salem, which was the Great Trails State Conference, where we did talk about a lot of different trail surfacing and different avenues for funding and all the great things that are involved around trails. So we are starting to work towards trying to get some type of trail system on this property. And in the future, near future, I plan to bring just an overview to the council
Oh,
to
that'd be fun.
review what we can do
Good.
there.
That'd be good.
Look forward to that.
Thank you so very much. The next item on our agenda is the water sewer grant. Mr. Lanston?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as you know, Nash County has passed a resolution at its last commissioners meeting that shared some of the 17 million that it received in its state appropriation with the municipalities in Nash County. And we are the recipient of 1.5 million of that 17 million, and it's to be used for wastewater and water repairs and upgrades. With the passage of that resolution, Nash County has supplied us with a interlocal agreement regarding the receipt of that money. And the way that all reads is we will choose an engineer and go forward with appropriate wastewater or water improvement and or repair project, incur costs for that, and once we pay those costs, then we can submit to Nash County for reimbursement of what we paid. And within 10 days of receipt of our request, they will forward the funds to us. You probably had a chance to read through that whole agreement. There is one thing, this funding is coming with some administrative fees that NCDEQ is charging for administering and dispersing the 17 million, and Nash County is passing that 1.5% cost onto the recipients. So from the 1.5 million, we would have to pay 1.5%, which I think is $15,500 on that 1.5. If I did that math right.
That's right.
So that's the only thing, when I reviewed the interlocal agreement and when Raz reviewed it, the only thing that we highlighted. So I don't believe there's probably a way of getting out of that, since whatever NCDEQ sends out is going to be less that administrative fee. They're going to take it.
So am I to understand that the 1.5 will not be transferred to us as a whole? We have to draw down on it as we use it.
Yeah, it's a reimbursement.
It's a reimbursement type thing.
We have to spend it, pay the bill, and
And
then,
then reimburse it up to
yeah.
that. Well, I mean, the 1.5 administrative fee, I don't look at it as being, we're having to pay a 1.5. It's just it's 1.5 less than what we already had, which is
Zero.
zero.
So,
I said, take it and go with it.
so do I hear a motion then, Mr. Taylor, to approve the resolution?
You do have that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
To approve the resolution 2024-28, an interlocal agreement between the town of Nashville and Nash County for the receipt of $1,500,500 of a $17,022,501 state of North Carolina appropriation for water and sewer repairs and improvements. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is possible projects for water and sewer grant. And also, we'll go back to you, Mr. Lance.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have had an asset inventory assessment done with grant money from NCDEQ and Matt Gay and Associates. We contracted with them. And part of that is they came up with a 10-year capital improvement plan for both wastewater or sewer and water. Now, there are a number of projects that they spell out and give cost estimates for. When you look at those cost estimates, that 1.5 doesn't go real far, unfortunately. But at this time, I'd like to have some discussion with the council on what projects that are listed in that capital improvement for both water and sewer you think we should go forward with. Whatever you choose, it's going to be large enough in scope. We will have to follow the Minnie Brooks Act and do a statement of qualifications for professional services to hire the engineer and then select an engineer and then have them engineer the project. And of course, before we go ahead and construct anything, that'll have to be competitively bid out and receive bids on it. So, don't know if you've had a chance to look at the list of projects in the wastewater CIP and the water CIP. One of the things I was thinking about, we have these aging 2-inch galvanized water mains. They're only 2-inch, so it's tough to call them mains. They're more like lines in the older parts of town, and they are failing. And we've known this for several years. This would be a good source of money to tackle a good portion of that project. Now, where there is not another newer water line parallel with these 2 inches water lines, we'd have to build new water lines, and then anybody that's on that 2-inch, connect them to the new line. But reviewing the list of 2-inch water lines with Brian and Chad, a number of those have newer mains paralleling them. We've just never taken the time to, as far as we know, disconnect those that are connected to the 2-inch to the newer main. In some neighborhoods we have, but the old one's still there, it's still live, and when it starts leaking, we go out and repair it. Somewhat problematic, as it's difficult to know where they actually attach. But anyway, we could pursue that project, and in engineering that, we would identify where all the 2-inch are, where they tie on to our bigger mains, eliminate them, and then figure out which houses are still connected to them. And then, if there isn't a new main to connect them to, put that in or tie them to an existing main. One of the other things that Mike Tolson, who did the asset inventory, is recommending we do is spend some of that money inserting valves into our water system. And Brian Grice is here this evening. Brian, if you wouldn't mind coming up. And one of the problems we have when we do have an emergency and we need to shut down a water main for repair or to fix it is we don't always have valves in the right place. And next thing you know, we're shutting down 5 blocks to try and isolate the water main break versus a block or 2 blocks. So Mike Tolson has put in a recommendation for us to consider here tonight about putting in inserter valves in.
Well, Randy, aren't we going to have to address these 2-inch galvanized water mains at some point?
Oh, yeah,
Either
Some
now,
point,
either now or later?
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Before Brian starts, I agree with what you're saying, Randy, but looking at this real quick and reading through it, 2 things jump out at me. The sanitary sewer manhole rehab project, which we've already started. That's something I wish we'd just take some of this money and go ahead and finish it. Let's don't get halfway through with it and jump to something else, and we still got manholes with infiltrations coming all the way through it. So I would like to see that finished. And the second one is subdivisions without sewer. We've been bouncing this around for Woodfield and for
Essex.
and for Essex Road and
Regency.
Regency. We've been bouncing this around for quite a while, and those residents out there have been more than patient with the town to get this stuff done, because out there in Essex Road, when I built my house out there in '75, we were told that sewer would be laid in there at some future date, and that's from '75 and still hadn't been done. I think we need to go ahead and get this done. I mean, everybody's been real patient, and we've got the ball rolling, but we haven't started doing any work yet, and I think we need to go ahead and pursue that.
One thing to that, Larry, we don't need to use this money for those 2 projects. We already have grant funding
Right.
to pay for those. We're Mackay and Associates, the plans for extending the sewer in both those subdivisions is at NCDEQ being reviewed.
Well, as long as we got the money for it, I should make sure, if we didn't have the money, we'd use this to finish it out with. But yes, I do remember we do have the money.
Yeah.
But like I said, nothing has been done.
Yeah, and I can show you our last sewer bill with Rocky Mount, and
Oh, yeah.
yes, sealing up those manholes
Manholes
is a $286,000 priority,
Yeah.
because that's what it costs on this month's sewer bill from all the rain we've had the last month and a half.
And the rain we're getting now, so let's go ahead and fix that.
So, I'll let you guys have discussion, but
One more
I
question for
agree.
Brian Starks.
sir.
You mentioned engineering, trying to figure out if there's a new one next to the 2-inch. Are you talking about engineering it before you open up the thing, or are you talking about engineering it while you're there? Fixing the 2 inches next to a parallel of a new one. We don't know that, right? We don't know where they are. Is that
Well,
what
we
you-
know where they are. We know what streets the 2-inch lines are on.
We do.
And the guys know if there's a parallel new line
Good.
that we
Okay.
can hook people up to.
So we can plan
Now,
that ahead of time. We don't have to plan that as we're doing it.
I
Yeah,
can't
we gotta go
remember,
in and pothole, where the 2-inch locates out to the main that runs perpendicular, we assume is tied in, to, pothole down on the main and see exactly where that T is before we go to talking inserting valves and,
So there is
Trying to get it
there is
shot.
some exploratory that we have to do.
yes, sir.
Okay.
I thought I had put that list of 2-inch water lines in there, but I don't think I did. If you're interested in seeing it quick, I can pull it up.
Wasn't that the 1 point something million? Oh, that was the fire department.
These are where they are. So we got Covington Court from Essex Road to the cul-de-sac. We got South Collins Street from Lucille to Cross Street, Sunshine Court from Gophers Lane to the cul-de-sac, Birchwood Court from Birchwood Drive to the cul-de-sac. There's one on Nashville Court, South Hillard Street, Slurry Drive, South Collins Street. I think that's supposed to say just south of Outfall, between Park Avenue and southwest of Lot. I took these off, I don't know if it was Larry Williams' old notes or somebody before him. Kate's Lane, Cockrell Street, West Elm Aviation, Winstead Road, that's the one back by the bus barn and garage. Washington Street, Old Wilson Road, and Old White Oak Road, and that's, the bottom ones are the longest. Now, Washington Street, from Aviation to Oak, we have new main all along there. It's just a matter of finding who's still tied to that old 2-inch, finding where that ties to and eliminating him and tying him onto the new.
How many of those streets do we just pave?
I don't think any of these we just
Well, that's
paved this
good.
year. Aviation Avenue is one we paved a couple of years back.
Right.
But my understanding of that 2-inch water line, it's on the back side of the curb. And we're not gonna dig these up and replace them. They're just gonna be abandoned in place. And if we have to put a new one to serve that same street, it's gonna be on the back side of the curb. So the service lines will just be thumped under the road. We shouldn't have a whole lot of street repair.
Good.
Now, if the new main that we have to tie one to is in the middle of the road, we'll have to dig up the road.
Yeah,
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds
Brian?
sounds like it's all over
Excuse me.
town.
Maybe you guys want to come up with a dollar amount you'd like to see for 2-inch water line replacement and a dollar amount for continuing to seal manholes. We have that current contract, it's a 3-year contract with CTR Coatings for $450,000 of manhole sealing. And that, there's a lot of variables in that depending upon the manhole. But for a 4-foot wide manhole, that amounts to about $300 a vertical foot. And most of our manholes are probably anywhere from 5.5 feet to 7 feet. And I got a hold of CTR Coatings this week, and 450 is the minimum. If we wanted to spend $1 million with them in the next 3 years, we could do that. And that, I don't know how many manholes that would get us sealed, but I forget, Brian, do you remember in the asset inventory assessment, how many of the super leakers?
I couldn't
Mac
say
A,
right offhand.
like
I
100?
do know out of the Avents Road outfall, they're 3 shy of finishing that project.
And there were
then
17 out
there's-
there.
Yes, and there's 3 or 4 more that we added to make the 150 for the year. But I don't know exactly on the.
And that's a project we don't need engineering for. I mean, those have already been identified in our asset inventory. I think there was 112 that Matt Gay and Associates opened up, looked in, inspected, and said, this one leaks bad, it needs to be fixed.
So what's costing us more money a year? Doing fixing the
2-inch.
sewers, or repairing the broken pipes we have to repair whenever they break? What costs us more of a year?
The sewer,
sewer.
the manholes,
The
especially
manholes.
when we get weather like this.
We had to pay for water that's not sewer.
Yeah,
We need to go ahead and
Would that correct
complete
that?
those. We need to.
it would go a long ways if you spent all, now, I don't think we have that many super leaker manholes to spend 1.5 million on. I think with what we've already done, we got right around 51 manholes sealed up, and I believe there was 112 altogether.
How many a year they were going to do? They're going to try to do on that contract?
$450,000 worth over the next 3 years, $150,000 per year.
Okay.
And hopefully that will get 27 manholes each year, approximately.
Okay, Brian? You have anything to share with us now that we've talked?
That's it. Thank you.
So it sounds like we need to do the manholes, and then whatever's left, we do a 2-inch, is what it sounds like. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think the manholes need to be, because as long as we keep those manholes open like they are, we're gonna stay dependent upon Rocky Mountain.
Well, we're always going to be dependent on Rocky Mountain, but
Well, I know,
we're paying them
but
more.
But not to that extent.
So how many, we was under how many for the next, to complete the contract? How many
Well,
manholes?
We're doing 150,000 a year, and we can do about 27 roughly, unless we get into one that's wider than 4 feet,
And then,
deeper than 7.
and then how many did you say that would leave?
About 112 we got to do, but we've done about 50 of them already. Well, what I can do between now and the next meeting is we can get a real good accurate figure of how many manholes are left and what it's going to cost to seal them up, and what more of the 450,000 that we've already allocated over the next 3 years we need to add to that in order to get those manholes sealed up. And then that'll tell us how much is left for eliminating 2-inch galvanized water
That would
lines.
be great.
And give us a breakdown of the super leakers, the bad ones to start
Yeah.
with.
If I remember right, the manhole money was not grant money. That was,
That was our own
that's
funds.
what I thought, that's what I thought,
Right.
yeah.
And the money we got from, was it Davis is doing Essex? I mean, out at Regency?
Yeah, if you guys recall, Regency and Essex, we applied to 2 different funding sources.
Right.
Right.
And we got awarded both. Now, since then, we put in a request to Congressman Don Davis for that, and I forget the dollar amount anymore. I think it was $975,000 to be able to use that on a similar project that serves the Regency Estates neighborhood. And I haven't heard back yet from, that one's being administered through the EPA, the federal EPA. When we got the community project fund money from Butterfield for the fire station,
Right.
that was administered through USDA. This one from Don Davis, because it's for sewer work, is going through the EPA. And what we asked to be able to use that money for, instead of Regency and Essex, which we got state grant money to take
Right.
care of those, is to do a project that would eliminate the Regency lift station. It would build a gravity flow line from Regency lift station to our outfall, which is on the other side of 64 heading to Rocky Mount, whereby eliminating, the cost of maintaining a lift station for that area.
But we're still waiting on that.
Yeah, to see if we can spend that money on that.
Well, so I think it's a good idea for you just do, see how much money we should spend on each project.
And bring it back to
And
the
bring it
council
back
at the
to
next
us,
meeting.
and then we'll, just, vote on it, but,
Is there a timeline on this 1.5?
Well, there is somewhat of a timeline, but we're well within what time Jonathan Boone said we were allotted. He was concerned that towns would take this money and use it to projects that have already started, and they may have not done what was required as far as meeting the Mini Brooks Act and following all the regulations for procurement on the spending of these funds.
But we have 12 months or so to
Yeah.
use it. Okay.
We got a fair amount of time.
And Mayor, if I may.
yes.
In listening to all of this, Randy, I'm just grateful that we are having a conversation about water and sewer from a perspective of being proactive rather than reactive. Because a lot of times we're just basically maintaining or trying with an attempt to maintain. And this gives us an opportunity to look at what our priorities are based off of what we're looking at in a 10-year plan and trying to move forward. So with that and the savings that go along with it, I'm grateful that we're having this discussion and we're moving with the priorities to get things done.
Absolutely, and I'm so grateful that, you and the crew have identified things where we were just never being proactive on, and we were just reacting. So you have made a lot of progress, getting things right, and if we can just keep getting grants, we can get everything right.
Well, it's nice to get ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gives an opportunity to get ahead of the 8 ball for a change.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other comments on this?
So we're just gonna wait on this.
Yeah, well,
Have Randy
as soon as he
do some
lets us
more
know,
work.
correct. Well, if not, do any of the other council members have anything to say tonight? Do you have anything else, Randy or the clerk?
No, I don't have anything to report.
If not, do I hear a motion for the meeting to be adjourned?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned, and thank those of you for coming out that came out.